I'm Andrew, and I'm setting out to make better videos for diesel enthusiasts. Follow along as I review products, do how-tos, and share my personal trucks here on Just Diesels.
Today we're going to be talking about probably one of the most common modifications that is done on trucks and cars, and that is air intakes. More specifically, we're going to be putting an S&B intake on my truck, but I want to take a step back and show you guys the before and after, and I want to tell you guys if this is actually really worth the time and money invested. So I want to take you guys, before we get anything going on this intake, for a quick ride in my truck. I want to show you what it sounds like now, how it drives now, and we'll just see what it's going to be. So currently on my truck, it has a factory air intake. I have the turbo silencer ring removed from my turbo, and I also have the intake tube gutted. So the directional channels are still in the intake tube, but the baffling that's in there to really reduce noise, I took out because I wanted the truck to sound a little bit louder. It's still just barely louder than stock. It's pretty quiet unless you have a big load on the truck. But let's go for a ride. I'm gonna show you guys what the truck sounds like now, and then we'll get back into the garage. Before we put the intake on, I wanted to give you guys kind of a baseline of what this truck sounds like. So this is with the factory intake. There is no silencer ring on my turbo, and I also have the intake tube gutted. There's a lot of like baffling in there, and I pulled that out to make the truck a little bit louder. So right now we're cruising at like 50 miles an hour. This is what the truck sounds like. It's mostly exhaust. I'm making 4 PSI of boost right now, but you can just barely hear a faint little noise. We have a grade coming up, so I'll kind of let you hear the difference here, but I'll just shut up and let you hear the truck. And we've got a slight grade coming up, so that's where I'll get a little boost going. You'll actually be able to hear what the truck sounds like. And there actually is some turbo whistle now. It's just not super prominent. So here, I'll get into it for you. It's 20 PSI. 25, 27, 28, 29, 30. So you can hear it, but it's not super pronounced. So hopefully we'll change that a little bit. All right, so now you get a chance to hear what the truck sounds like stock. You can still hear the turbo. It's not super pronounced, but there's definitely a nice little whistle, especially if I have a load on the truck going uphill. I know if I'm towing, obviously I didn't do that in this video, but if I'm towing with a load on the truck and going uphill, you can really hear the turbo, but it still isn't that pronounced. And what I really wanted with this intake was to actually hear the turbo more. I got a diesel truck. I don't drive this thing every day, and what I want to do is hear it make fun noises, right? So I got a straight pipe exhaust on there, and I figured the intake was kind of the next step. Now, I've always resisted doing an intake on this truck for one reason, and that is that on this particular platform, you're not gonna see a huge performance gain. S&B claims a 42% increase in flow over the factory intake, but on this platform, the factory intake is actually able to flow up to about 400 horsepower with the factory filter in place. So that's actually a decently impressive number. Most OEMs have way more restrictive intakes, and there's a huge advantage there in terms of performance, et cetera, et cetera. What I'm curious about in this truck is if there actually is any measurable increase in performance and what the increase in sound and sound quality is. So today we're gonna throw this thing on my truck, and I'm gonna take you guys for a drive after I do that to show you what it sounds like, what it feels like, and everything else. So let's get to putting this thing on my truck. Basically, if you have some, basic hand tools, you have a couple of wrenches, a couple of sockets, and a couple of screwdrivers, you can throw this thing in your truck. And I think that's really cool. I think that's why so many people do intakes, is because they are so accessible. Air intakes are probably the most easily accessible thing. You can literally do this in the driveway of your apartment if you need to. So that is what's cool. And this intake probably took me maybe 40 minutes to put in, even with filming. So S&B did a really good job of making this super user-friendly and just a really easy fit, good install process, and everything else. One of their signature pieces, of course, is the clear plexiglass shield that lets you see the air filter. Now, speaking of air filters, there's a couple options on these. You can either go with the reusable oiled filter or the cotton dry filter. I opted for the cotton dry filter because this truck sees a lot of dirt, it sees a lot of off-road driving, and that cotton filter is gonna just do a hair bit better job of filtering, and that's exactly what I want out of my air filter. That was the whole reason I hadn't really switched from the OEM filter, because that one does an awesome job filtering. So this one does just as good a job at filtering as the OEM filter. That's a nice benefit of this intake. And the nice thing too is if you are looking for like a big horsepower application, you're looking to flow, over 500 horse. If you want to do the reusable filter, that's the oiled one, that's going to flow more air and it's going to be plenty breathable for your truck. Now, at the bottom of this air intake box, there's also a block-off plate. You can leave that open, again, if you're trying to do a high horsepower application, you're mostly driving the street. I chose to close that because this truck is, again, seeing lots of dirt, water, things like that off-road. And so I wanted to have one less opportunity for dirt and water to get in the intake. So I blocked that off. It's a nice feature that S&B lets you choose that because, again, you can kind of cater it to your application, what you're trying to do with the truck. So now that I have this thing on, let's check it out. All right, so aside from looking really cool, right, this is a nice, cool piece to dress up your engine bay. There's actually some performance gains in this. Supposedly, you do have an increase in fuel economy, an increase in horsepower, an increase in torque. You'll see people on the forums claiming, oh, I felt a huge improvement. I gained 10 miles to the gallon. I'm not gonna lie to you guys. I really noticed no change. My truck drove the same. It feels the same, my fuel economy is the same, everything else is the same, but one thing changed, and that is the sound. I was actually really impressed with the sound. You know what, actually, let me just take you guys for a drive. Hang on, let's go see what this thing sounds like. All right, so we got the intake on, out here testing it out. I'm on a flat right now, but we're about to go up a little grade. I'm actually pretty excited to see what this sounds like. It's definitely louder, it's not obnoxious, it's just like a, ooh, that sounds good. I like that. It's a little bit deeper in tone than I think it used to be. It was a little bit more of like a high-pitched whistle before. But man, I like that. So for the sake of comparison, here's the same exact hill we hit yesterday. I'll shut up and just let you hear the truck. That was 31 PSI peak boost, and yeah, that sounds good. Like I said, it's not annoying, it's just like this perfect extra noise. It's always fun to hear fun, sucky, spinny noises from the turbo, and yeah, not half bad for a stock turbo on the truck. So I think I'm pretty happy with this setup. I was a little worried it'd be too loud. I've always been a little hesitant with air intakes just because there's not a huge gain other than sound, but man, that was, I think that's worth it. So cruising, right now I'm doing, I don't know, like 54 at 4 PSI of boost. That's another area where like I didn't used to hear any turbo noise, and now I just hear like a faint little like whistle. And so I really like that. That's kind of nice. It just adds a little bit of, I don't know, fun to the truck. But the second I turn on the stereo, it's gone. So it's subtle, but it's nice, it's pronounced, the tone is really good. So yeah, I did a good job on this intake, and I'm quite happy with it. It's a good addition to the truck. So yeah, as you can hear in the video, it just sounds a lot better. It's a little bit more pronounced. It's not obnoxious, but it has more of a cool turbo, diesel, all the sounds I want to hear out of the truck. This is my weekend truck, my road trip truck, my camping truck. So I want to hear it make fun noises when I drive it. And this intake nailed that. S&B did an awesome job. And I'm actually overall really happy with this. I kind of am kicking myself for waiting so long to do an intake. I resisted for such a long time because I was like, there's not a huge performance gain on this truck. You know, other cars have way bigger gains that you can make, but the 5.9 Cummins actually has a really solid intake from the factory in terms of airflow. And so I was like, you know what, I'm not gonna do it. There's not really a huge performance gain. I'm not gonna really notice anything. So I'm not gonna do it. But man, do I regret it. I have been missing out on years of awesome turbo noises that I wish I had. And the factory turbos in these trucks are actually really quiet, so it's kind of cool to make it have a more pronounced noise, be able to hear when I'm driving. So overall, I'm actually pretty stoked on this thing. If you're on the fence about an intake, don't get one because you're expecting to make up for the fuel economy you lost with 37s. But if you're hoping to get better noise out of the truck, if you want to hear your turbo more, if you want to hear it sound more like a truck, that is absolutely the way to go. And I gotta say, the fit, finish, everything else in the SMB intake was beyond my expectations. So I'm pretty happy with it. And yeah, if you want to pick one of these up, I got a link down below. I get nothing out of it, but I figured I'd take you guys along for the journey since I finally decided to pony up and get an intake and put it on my truck. So thank you guys so much for watching. I will check back next week with another video.